Bullet List podcast with my son Bob and his friend Keith.
Hey, Bob. Welcome to another edition of the Bullet List. Bob, how you been?
Pretty good, pretty good.
Considering this is our second one of the day?
Yeah, best warming up. We're ready to go. Yeah, it's all good.
Yeah, and I think I'm pretty excited for this one. So, and I'll tell a little story before I tee up who our guest is. So I volunteer for a local organization here in my little lovely town north of Chicago, Illinois, called Glenview. Me and this other dude, Jim, are the people who run this organization's website. And he pinged me one day and he's like, Keith, you got to meet my son-in-law. I got to connect the two of you. He's awesome. He's going to become a speaker. He's da-da-da-da-da. And I said, okay. And so Mike Kavanagh, who is our guest. Hi, Mike. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm awesome. And we had a really good chat. We actually talked for about an hour and I'm like, oh Mike, you are going to be awesome for the podcast.
We'll see about that.
So, I think oh, don't make me laugh. I think that a good way to tee up our audience is to tell them a little bit about yourself, right? You are a speaker. You do keynotes and all that kind of great stuff. So tell them a little bit about you and what it is you bring to the table.
Yeah, you bet. Well, thanks for having me here, you guys. It's Bullet List, and I've learned that you guys are saving all the hard balls for me. So these bullets are going to be flying my way any moment now.
Oh yeah.
So I'm new to the game, but also in a way, a bit. It's like my reunion tour in a way, because years ago I was in the consulting industry and I worked for a couple of different smaller consulting companies that were focused on helping out Fortune 500 companies with all things related to growth. And there was a heavy degree of speaking that happened back then. And I actually worked for a guy named Michael Tracy, and he is definitely made the rounds on the speaking tour many, many times. He's actually quite a gifted speaker. And so, so back in the day, I used to do some speaking and workshops, under that umbrella. And then I ended up going more in the path of my own leadership journey. So I ended up taking a corporate executive role, did that for a number of years. And then 2019, just before COVID hit, I had my company. Well, it was private equity bought the company. And so there was a leadership change out. And I was one of the people who was let go as they brought in the new executive team. And so it was like a reset button opportunity for me to kind of take a step back and say, what do I really want to do? And I had always been super passionate, not only about leadership oriented work, but also I've always felt like a lot of what you get with people who try to help leaders in organizational situations is you get people who come in and talk performance tactics, and it's all about the professional life only. And what I was seeing is that a lot of the false separation between the rest of your life and your professional and leadership life, that you can't really separate those two things out. And a lot of the things you need to do to be effective in one domain actually go into the other direction. And a lot of people are focused on, I want to perform at my best in my job in order to, meet my goals, and that's going to make me feel good. But the other direction is equally as important, that if you're not also focusing on your own kind of well-being and you're not bringing the right kind of energy into the role, then you're not going to be as successful. And so that's been a big area that I like to work with teams on. And that's what got me into the notion of doing some speaking, doing some workshops, and also working with teams directly.
Well, and I think it was really cool because when we first talked, I was like, oh my heavens, a new voice, right? Because what happens a lot of times in, the meetings and events industry can be a gigantic echo chamber, right? And as you travel and do a lot of events, you will see the same speakers over and over and over. And I think, you fresh face, who's experienced. You've done speaking before. It's not like this is something that's 100% new to you. But I just thought the time was, with COVID, with more organizations doing the virtual events and then now going back to live, I thought it was a perfect time for a new fresh face, or at least a face not everyone knows, to pop into the industries. But that leads us to, on your journey of coming in and doing speaking and things like that, what were some of the things you learned?
And am learning, have yet to learn. We can cover all of them. By the end of this, I'll be asking you guys for some advice here.
Yeah, or you'll be writing a book.
I love writing, so that's totally my jam. So for me, I think the biggest thing that I've tried to do and that I've learned is, just going out there and not having a brand name, so to speak, for yourself, not having a whole lot of existing, say, contacts or connections that would get your foot in the door and different things. Everybody, the going in advice is, hey, just put your name out there, try to find any free opportunities that just to build your experience set and so forth. But because of the nature of COVID and the fact that there's just a lot less going on, at least from a live standpoint, mostly virtual, one of the things that I thought I'd do is try to more take a different approach. And so for me, because I've done so much work with teams, I had this question in my mind. All of the speaking that I had done historically was like, okay, it's a leadership event, and we were calling in all the big leaders in the organization from all over the world, and it's a big thing. And then we're going to have this person do 1 hour of rah-rah. What I've been finding throughout the COVID period is that everybody's burnt out, they're beaten down, they're kind of just going from Zoom call to Zoom call or Teams call to Teams call all day long. There's this bleeding between personal life and home life, or home life and work life, that's difficult for everybody. And so there's really been, most people have not, it's all business during these certain hours of the day. They're not having those opportunities to kind of take a step back and reflect on a lot of what I think is really important for both for performance and for well-being. And so my own approach has been, well, why don't I just start smaller and see, can we create almost like mini events for smaller teams, smaller groups? And so what I've been doing has been essentially offering these very brief workshops, anywhere from 1 to 2, occasionally 3 hours for those that really want to go into it. And basically it's like anybody, you can imagine like a vice president of some function saying, you know what, I'll just hire somebody to come in. We'll take a little bit of time as a team, and it's something we can just easily schedule into our workday. It's not super expensive. And this is like a good break for us all to take a breath, have a different kind of discussion, and have some different thoughts brought in from the outside. So that's been my approach to kind of taking what people were telling me to do and sort of orienting it more toward my own background and my own strengths to try to build up my own skills and, network and all of those good things to hopefully have that carry me into the future as things start to open up more.
Well, and I think that's kind of a cool, approach, doing the smaller workshop kind of thing, as opposed to, especially for the teams that have to participate. You're not going to sit down for an hour or 90 minutes or 120 minutes, whatever it is, and listen to someone talk to you. When you're workshopping it a little bit, it allows you to learn a little bit about the audience and kind of adjust as you go.
Yes, 100%. Like I was doing a workshop with a team, and one of the first places that we started. So I also like to sometimes put out a brief kind of team and company self-assessment survey that the workshop participants will do in advance, which gives me a little sense for what's going well, where do they think that they could use some help, and just, I get a little bit of a pulse on things going in, and that also lets me tailor things. So it's not like a canned thing that I'm just going and doing the same thing everywhere. And what in this particular instance, it was a remarkable, like I've never seen anything quite like this, but there were like, we're super high on, say like 8 out of the 10 dimensions, but there were 2 where they were basically rock bottom, including everybody scored themselves as low as you possibly can. This is a group of, I think, 14 people. Everybody scored themselves as a 1 on one specific dimension. And this had to do with, in their case, it was around focus, trying to do too many things and what that was doing to them, both strategically as an organization, as well as how it was impacting stress and other things. And that was so key, because now you say, okay, there's a huge opportunity here. And these folks now can be brought together and have a conversation. And I can provide some ideas and we can bat things around, but also there's a ton of people who clearly already thought a lot about this. Let's get their voice heard throughout this period of time. And so it's just like a healthy discussion that comes out of that. And it's the kind of thing that they're not really taking the time to do otherwise, had it not been forced upon them by having this time carved out for this workshop.
Well, and I think that's, I know what I want to say, and I'm not quite sure I know how to say it, but I mean, it is the good organization, I guess, that will listen to what their people are saying. And so, is there ever any fear, especially when you send out these, like a self-assessment or things like that, that people, I'm amazed that you got all the people that answered a 1 on that, because most people try and answer those questions how they want the boss to, right? Or how they want people above them, to think they think about it. But it is kind of refreshing, if people are actually honest on those surveys, and because then you can actually go in and affect change.
Yes, 100%. And one of the things I try to do to elicit honesty is typically I'm asking for this kind of advice. It is all anonymous, truly anonymous. So they're sending it to me, but then not every leader is necessarily going to be as progressive as this particular leader in this particular example. So I will share the results with them. Now it's their choice as to whether or not they want that to be shared as part of the discussion for the results to be fed back. I think a good leader would say yes, absolutely. It's the truth. There's no sense in trying to hide it. It's the only way that we can move forward as a team or as an organization. But not every leader is going to do that. And I recognize there are also extenuating circumstances or sensitivities. And so there's always that, there's that protection that I'm providing people. So I still want the input, and they're going to let me get it, because it still allows me to say, you know what, I'm going to tailor things to make sure that I'm not, orienting time around things that you guys already have locked down. You're already feeling like you're in the green. Let's do it that way. But that's part of how I try to tackle it, because you're absolutely right. I think a lot of times you have to be very careful about survey results because of exactly what you just said.
Yeah, I think we were just Bob and I were just having a conversation with Michelle Bruno, who is in the event tech side of things, and we were talking about how the industry itself is very reluctant to change, which is why we're always, as an industry, we're usually 2 or 3 steps behind the rest of the world when it comes to event technology. As you're going out and trying things a little bit different than the normal speakers and the normal workshop facilitators, things like that, are you finding a receptive audience? Or are you seeing that people don't want change? They just want to stay in their same little echo chamber, which we all know will eventually doom you, if you just do the same things over and over. So I hope the answer is you're finding that people are really receptive, but knowing our industry.
So, and with respect to technology, or just more broadly?
More broadly, when you're approaching, an organization with what you bring to the table, smaller group workshops, quicker, those types of things. Are you getting that? Are you getting a receptive audience, or are they like, well, we like the guy who stands on the stage and talks at our people for 90 minutes? Are we as an industry becoming better, I guess is the question.
Yeah. So it's early read. So I by no means can confidently paint with super broad brush, but I've witnessed it as a mixed bag. So on one hand, what I see is there are definitely people who are saying, I'm looking for this. This is what I want. Like, I've already solved my problem. Do you, are you the square peg that fits into this square hole or not? And often the answer is no, that, that I'm trying to do things a little bit differently here. And that's okay. And so, I think if it's not a good fit because of that, then there are, a million other people that are out there that person can go seek out. So there is definitely some of that that's happening. But what's also, I think, on the flip side that I'm seeing is so much change has been foisted upon people just based on what's happening right now. Like, case in point, and I don't think we have begun to unpack the impact of this transition to remote/hybrid work that is going to carry forward in the future. I think as everybody talks about, okay, we're coming back, we're getting back in person, what's that going to look like? So many organizations are going to be mixed, and they have to figure out, how do we work as a team? How do we maintain collaboration? How do we innovate in this new environment where people are not overlapping? They're still doing a lot of screens there, but other people are in the office. How's that going to work? And I mean, that's just one example of a tremendous shift that is causing people to actually have to open themselves to, what? We don't have the answers. We don't know. We've never done this before. This is completely new ground. And that, I think, has actually fostered a degree of openness that has been quite healthy, that has allowed me to, to take some risks collaboratively with some of the teams that I'm working with.
Well, and hang on, we got to pause because we're going to have to edit because I totally lost my train of thought.
No, we don't edit. You remember, you've done it to me so many times. You don't edit. Anyway.
All right. So if we're not editing, I'm going to roll right into my question.
Just go for it. Come on.
I think that now is actually the right time for a lot of organizations to work with someone like you, because so many organizations now are in this hybrid model, just for the work side of things, not the event side of things, but the work side of things. And they're just doing it without thinking about it, right? They're like, oh, Janet, she'll get it. Here's her laptop. Send, she'll be fine from home. And people aren't. People are having to adapt to new realities. And the people that love to be in the office that no longer go to the office, they're going to be unhappy. And the people that, the people that want to be at home but are maybe being forced back into the office, they're going to be unhappy. So I think the time is right for someone like you, especially doing the smaller workshop style things, as well as, other things that you do. What a great and effective way for people to bring their teams up to speed and get a pulse on their teams.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I also see this opportunity too, with respect to, because a lot of people have done their bigger events the same way. And again, now I'm kind of thinking about, because a lot of my experience is with corporations. And so these events might be, it's the annual sales meeting, or it's the annual global leaders meeting, or what have you. There's almost an opportunity for a mindset shift there, which is, okay, that was always the big one big bang type of thing. Get everybody in person, lots of money, people flying in from everywhere, staying, the social aspects of the event, et cetera, et cetera. But the truth is, the biggest piece of feedback I hear coming out of those types of events is, it was great. We were so energized, how great content, great everything, and just good to be with people and connect. But the momentum gets lost coming out of it. And so what I would love to see is pairing. I think those are still really good for organizations and people in general, because of the energizing effect, the fact that you need to sometimes just be breaking bread with people in the evenings, reconnecting and levels that you can't do maybe in the way that you do virtually. But to be able to then say, you know what, let's not think about events as just this one big thing annually. Let's think about events as, maybe there's this one, and then we're having follow-up smaller things. And we have, through technology, the ability to do these in much broader, different ways, lower cost, lower time investment. That to me is something that I would love to see more people embracing going forward.
Well, and I think that one of the things that gets lost on a lot of planners and a lot of organizations, especially on the sales side, because we do sales incentives and, those types of things here, is the power of people talking about work when they're not working.
Yes.
Can be it's an amazing thing. And we'll use the salesperson analogy. When they go on an incentive program or whatever it is, you have all your top salespeople and they're sitting around a table having a beer or having a Coke, whatever it is. It's amazing the chemistry and the things that percolate up, and one of the things I always thought of is, okay, these are your top people. You're bringing them all together. They're all sitting around a table. They're not selling right now. They're just talking. Shouldn't you bring in the people that aren't doing so well or the new people and let them sit at the same table?
Right. Yeah.
So I don't know where that thought was going, but which I'm having a lot of that today. But what a great experience for the people who don't normally get to sit at that table. And I guess it goes to your point of, the other events. You do that one big event per year, but yes, you should have other smaller events or other things that are going on to bring people together and let them share ideas. I do think that that's super important.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like what you said about the non-work conversations and what comes out of that. It's been interesting for some of these sessions that I'm doing there because of the fact that there's a heavy personal or individual element to them. And so we could go into a topic that really has to do with something that applies as much to their personal life as it does to their work life. It has to do with them, growing as an individual in some way. Even that discussion, because it's not specifically about work, has that quality to it that you just talked about, where now, somebody who's super passionate or has their own kind of personal experience, they're talking about that, and it fosters like a new level of connection for people. Even just as simple as now we're seeing each other as peers who are going through a lot of the same sorts of things right now, not just professional colleagues. And I do think I totally agree. I couldn't agree more with that point you made. It's very valuable to have work people connect on non-work related things, or to have work discussions that are a little bit, they're not the typical kind of, we're sitting down because we need to have this meeting about this specific kind of thing that we're trying to accomplish.
So Mike, just carry on with this fascinating chat and all your things that you've been doing. There must have been something that you've done for a company that they have totally misunderstood. They've taken it in a direction that has left you speechless. But you're just going, what the hell are they doing? It must have been one of those moments.
Yeah. So the one that comes to mind immediately is that, and this is, I will say, this is one of those moments, those learning moments for me as well, where you think you're saying one thing and people are hearing a completely different thing. So maybe the problem's you. So I as I say, kind of workshop to workshop, it can be very different based on, the feedback I get beforehand. And so, but one area that I see as an issue with a lot of organizations is people tend to tip very far in the direction of being extremely goal oriented, and especially businesses. There's kind of this mentality of live and die by the numbers, KPIs to death, we're tracking all kinds of things. And the problem that happens there is that there's this constant outcome focused mentality, and the real unlocked like performance and value that you get is when you can actually, okay, I set the goal, but now I know where I'm headed to. I need to actually double down on being extremely process focused. So it's all about, and by process, I don't mean the way that everybody always thinks about that. It's more just, if all my energy is directed in the future, then I'm not spending all of my kind of time, my effort, my psychological energy focused on what can I control right now in the here and now? What's the next step? What's right in front of me? And can I channel 100% of my energy into knocking it out of the park on that thing? And so I a couple of times done this thing where I've gone into highlighting, telling all these stories about basically mishaps with respect to companies that have been, embarrassingly big on some goals. And there's some public examples of this as well that are out there, like General Motors executive team once went to the street basically saying, we're going to recapture 29% market share, and 29% became this like crazy corporate mantra. It was like posters on the walls, and they even had like lapel pins manufactured. People would wear these pins around the office, and they ended up failing quite publicly in a bit of an embarrassing way. So anyway, so I was sharing different stories along these lines to highlight the importance of shifting from this mentality of goals focused to process focused, which of course got completely misconstrued. And so I had somebody basically tear down everything, which maybe is okay if you're the real boss. But this team also has to plug into the broader organization who has goals and KPIs and things, and a board of directors and investors and to answer to and all of that. And so basically I heard the story after the fact that they kind of like, yes, I totally agree. We are way too like this, tore the Band-Aid off and, went in to their superior, and it became, I'll say, not a moment that could have been career suicide had they not backed themselves away very, very slowly and very delicately.
Oh dear.
So, and actually, that's one of those things you can actually see it happening. You can, people don't see me because we're audio only, but doing the flex and then getting ready to walk in.
I'm like, since learned, all right, I got to tone that down a lot and make sure I've got all appropriate caveats in place. These are just illustrations of extreme examples. Don't go tearing everything down until you're sure you got some degree of support for what you're going to do. So.
Exactly. So, and on the flip side, let's wrap up with an awesome, what is one of the great success stories that you've had lately with an organization and what you're bringing to the table? What is one where it went, the stars aligned, and the people, the powers that be were aligned with the people that were attending, were aligned with you, and it turned out to be a really great experience, not only for the attendees, but for you too. Because I think a lot of people a lot of times forget that it's important for the speaker, to connect and be having a good time for something to be uber successful.
Yeah. So one extremely successful scenario happened there's a company that I worked with that's going through a lot of transition. And what I find a lot of times is that when people are organizing events, it's always kind of top-down mentality of like, here's all the things that we want to do. Here's the things that we want to accomplish. Here's the messages that we want to get across. Let's go find somebody who can deliver that message. And what I think can be lost there is that often if there is something going on in the organization, like if the mentality of all the participants is in one place and you come in with a message, in this case, this was people extremely burned out, had been grinding for, years on end. And if somebody had come in and basically delivered the normal rah-rah message that underneath feels like we're just trying to get more out of you, it would have completely exploded. And so in this specific instance, there was that desire going in to say, well, here's the three things that we really want to come out of it. And immediately looking at the kind of feedback that I was getting is, oh, there's a disconnect here. And if we orient things in that direction, I mean, you're going to have turnover. People are going to be like, this is it. I don't want to listen to it. And in this case, just kudos to the leaders involved, had that kind of insight and maturity to say, you know what, maybe we need to we need to take a different approach here, and we need to build in more of what the people who are going to be here actually are feeling and actually need to hear. And so there was an entire section devoted to kind of addressing some of the various causes of burnout, and also genuine openness to hearing from people in terms of their ideas for things that could get better. So that to me was like a huge success story, and it didn't end there because I actually followed through on the things that they were hearing. I thought that was awesome. I would love to see a lot more of that, because I think that that's a theme that probably runs through a lot of organizations these days.
Yeah. And it is funny. It is funny that so many organizations, just kind of toe the line. No, we want to do this, and this, and they don't listen to the feedback. So it is actually refreshing when you work with an organization that is able to pivot as they go. You know, and not necessarily even with workshops or speakers and things like that. Just go with the flow in general. You know, I just did a live event last week where all of a sudden we had to switch everything around. They gave us new rooms, we moved all this stuff. And the client, it was so refreshing. They were like, it's okay, we'll deal with it. Right. They didn't go back and like, no, it has to be this way. You know, they kind of went with the flow, and they made it a thing for the attendees where, you know, they had to joke because the programs were all wrong, right? Because the rooms were switched. And it actually made it lighter for the attendees. Like everyone got a good laugh out of it. And so I think, you know, to your point, you know, kudos to the organization that got some of that feedback and said, ooh, you know what, we do have to change our gears here.
Yeah. Yeah. And I totally agree with you. And it's in your instance, I think, you know, the adaptability is so important. And also just like, we're all thrown these kinds of curveballs. And I think just to have a little bit of patience and understanding and recognize that we're all going to be in that situation. So, you know, what can we do to kind of collaboratively work our way out? I think that's awesome to hear that they were able to do that.
Mike, thanks so much for being here. I know, you know, first time guest for us. It was really cool actually having someone who, you know, for meeting and events industry podcasts, having on someone who's on the speaker role is not something that you see too often. So thanks for coming in, because it is actually interesting to hear from new voices in the industry. And if you are a planner out there who is looking for something a little bit different, I think Mike is definitely a good choice. In the show notes, you will have links to his website, as well as any other contact information. But Mike, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you guys for having me. It was fun.
Cheers, Mike.
Okay, that was cool.
Okay, we're not going to stop recording because, Mike, you are now about to do our voiceover. It won't probably be used for this episode, but in future episodes, I don't know, you've probably not heard them yet, but we have voiceovers done by other people. So at the start of the program,
I have one queued up. Hold on.
Oh, let's hear it. This is what it will sound like.
I hope. Oh, wait. Hold on. I gotta.
Providing he's got his acting, you
know? Voiceover. Here we go.
You are listening to the Bullet List podcast.
Oh, that's the middle. Hold on.
That's the middle bit. That's the one we always want to put in, but never do. Carry on.
God, I hope this is the right one, or else we just sat through like 30. We just lost 30 seconds of our lives.
No, we haven't.
This is the Bullet List podcast with two guys that haven't got a clue about anything.
So did you hear that?
Yes, I did.
So that was one of our. So it could actually, you know, you're listening to the Bullet List podcast with these two idiots that had me on. It can be anything along those lines.
All right.
I can't believe you're sucking them into this, Bob.
Oh, come on. We could have been done. We had, your son did it, Keith, didn't he?
He did, actually.
Yeah.
He did one. You're listening to the Bullet List podcast with my dad and some random British guy.
And for the very first episode, I got my mum to do it.
Yes. So you could do one. You could do. You're listening to the Bullet List podcast. I can't believe my father-in-law introduced me to these idiots.
Oh yeah, that'll do.
All right, I love it.
So if you're up for it, anytime you're ready.
All right. You are listening to the Bullet List podcast, and I have to say, I cannot believe that my father-in-law introduced me to these two idiots.
Ooh, that's it.
That was awesome.
That's it. Fabulous.
That was excellent. All right. Well, thank you absolutely so much for doing this. I think it was a lot of fun.
Likewise. Thanks for having me, guys. This was
We could have kept talking for at least another couple of hours, but so we'll have to have you back.